Captain J. Park stood at the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel *Endurance*, staring at the stars that dotted the black canvas of space. The ship hummed softly around him. It was his 5th year as captain, and these routine survey missions had become second nature. "Captain, I'm picking up an unusual energy reading," said his sensor officer. 3 o'clock, about 50,000 kilometers. Jay walked over to look at the screen. "Can you identify it?" "No, sir. It's unlike anything in our database." Jay nodded. "Change course. Let's take a closer look." That was his first mistake. The *Endurance* had just adjusted its trajectory when a brilliant purple light flashed across the view screen. The ship shuddered violently. Warning alarms blared. "Status report," Jay shouted over the noise. "All systems failing, Captain. It's some kind of energy pulse. It's disabled everything." Jay grabbed the edge of his console as the artificial gravity flickered. "Send a distress signal. Now." The communications officer frantically worked her controls. "Nothing's responding, sir. We're dead in space." Through the view screen, Jay watched as a massive ship emerged from behind the small moon they had been scanning. It was sleek and silver, at least 5 times the size of the *Endurance*. It had no visible engines, yet it moved with graceful precision. "All hands, prepare for possible boarding," Jay ordered, his voice calm despite the fear building in his chest. They never got the chance. A beam of golden light engulfed the bridge, and Jay felt his body tingling, dissolving. The last thing he saw was his crew reaching for their weapons before everything went white. Jay woke up on a cold metal table. His uniform was gone, replaced by a simple gray jumpsuit. The room around him was circular with walls that seemed to shift subtly, as if they weren't quite solid. A soft blue light came from everywhere and nowhere. When he tried to sit up, invisible restraints held him down. "The specimen is conscious," said a voice, clear but with an odd musical quality that no human voice possessed. A figure stepped into Jay's line of sight. It was tall and thin, with skin the color of pale blue ice. Its 4-fingered hands moved with careful precision as it checked something on a floating screen. Its face was almost human, but too perfect, with large almond-shaped eyes that were completely black. "I am Hansol," the alien said, its mouth not quite matching the words Jay heard. "Lead researcher of biological sciences for the Chiral Dominion. I am Captain J. Park of the Earth exploration vessel *Endurance*. Jay replied, his voice steady. "You have committed an act of war by attacking my ship. Where is my crew?" Hansol tilted its head. "Your crew has been returned to the nearest human outpost. They will not remember the encounter. You, however, are far too valuable for us to release." Another Chiral entered the room. This one wore an ornate silver uniform with symbols that glowed faintly. "Is this the human, Hansol?" the newcomer asked. "Yes, Supreme Commander Taiwan. This is the specimen I selected." Taiwan approached the table and studied Jai with cold eyes. "It looks unremarkable. Are you certain this one will provide the data we need?" "His psychological profile is ideal," Hansol replied. "Military training, but with unusually high emotional intelligence. He has also experienced significant trauma and recovered, the death of his sister in the Proxima colony attack. He represents the resilience factor we wish to study." They spoke as if Jay wasn't there or couldn't understand them. "I demand to be released," Jay said firmly, "under interstellar law." Taiwan made a sharp gesture, and Jay's voice cut off mid-sentence. He could still move his mouth, but no sound came out. "Your laws do not apply to us, human," Taiwan said. "The Chiral have been watching your kind for decades. You are dangerous, not because of your technology, which is primitive, but because of your inexplicable ability to endure and adapt." Hansol stepped closer. "We need to understand this quality. To study it, we must try to break it." The scientist's voice was clinical, without malice. "The experiment has been approved. We will discover exactly how much a human can take before they shatter. As Ta-1 left, Hansol waved a hand, and the table Jay was on began to move, floating toward a doorway that opened in the shifting wall. Rest now, Captain Park, Hansol said. Tomorrow, we begin. The testing chamber was large and empty. Its walls could change to create different environments. Right now, they looked like a simple white room. Jazz stood in the center, still wearing the gray jumpsuit. His bare feet felt cold on the metal floor. Hansol watched from behind a clear wall. Next to the lead scientist stood a younger Kirill with lighter blue skin. This is Jin, Hansol said through speakers in the room. He will monitor your body functions during the tests. Jin nodded at Ja. There was something different in his eyes. Maybe curiosity, maybe concern. What kind of tests? Ja asked, keeping his voice calm. First, we will test your physical limits, Hansol replied. Begin sequence 1. The floor beneath Jay suddenly became a treadmill. It started to move, forcing him to walk, then run. Keep running until you cannot continue, Hansol instructed. Jay began at an easy pace. He was fit from military training and regular exercise on his ship. Hour 1 passed, then 2. The speed increased gradually. Sweat poured down his face and back. His legs burned. Jin watched the screen showing Jay's heart rate, oxygen levels, and other body measurements. His head tilted in confusion. His endurance exceeds our models, Jin said to Hansol. Most species would have collapsed by now. 3 hours passed. Jay's breathing was heavy, but he kept running. His mind went to his training days, when his drill sergeant made them run for hours in the rain. Increase difficulty, Hansol ordered. The room temperature rose quickly. Soon it felt like running in a desert at noon. Jay's throat burned with each breath. Still, he ran. Remarkable, Jin whispered. At the 4-hour mark, a door opened and a female Kirill entered the observation room. She was shorter than the others, with darker blue patterns on her skin. Suji, Hansol acknowledged her. You're just in time. The human is demonstrating unexpected stamina. Sujai looked at Ja with wide eyes. Is this necessary, lead researcher? Supreme Commander Ta-1 said to test him, not torture him. This is not torture, Hansol said coldly. This is science. We must find his limits. 5 hours now. Jay's legs felt like they were on fire. His lungs couldn't get enough air. But still, he ran. Finally, at 5 hours and 23 minutes, Jay's legs gave out. He fell hard on the treadmill and was thrown against the back wall. Suji gasped. Jin quickly checked his readings. He's exhausted but not seriously injured, Jin reported. Hansol made notes on a floating screen. Prepare the strength test. Shouldn't we let him rest? Suji asked. No, we must stress all systems simultaneously. That is how we will find the breaking point. Guards entered the room and helped Jay to his feet. They brought him to a machine with metal bars. Lift, Hansol commanded. Jay gripped the bars. They were connected to weights that increased as he pulled. His arms shook from exhaustion, but he lifted. The weight kept growing. Stop, Jin said suddenly. His muscle fibers are tearing. Hansol ignored him. Continue. Jay's face twisted in pain, but he kept lifting. Blood began to seep through the jumpsuit at his shoulders. I said stop. Jin raised his voice. We'll get no useful data if he's severely injured. Hansol waved a hand, and the weights released. Jay collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Take him to the recovery chamber, Hansol ordered the guards. Inject the healing serum. As they dragged Jay away, he looked up and caught Suji's eyes. To everyone's surprise, he smiled at her. Thank you for your concern, he said softly. Sujai stepped back, shocked by his courtesy despite his pain. Later, as Jay floated in a healing tank filled with blue liquid, Hansol reviewed the data with Jin and Suji. His physical resilience is impressive, but not our main interest, Hansol said. Tomorrow, we test his mind. Sujai looked through the glass at the human floating in the tank, his eyes closed. What if we can't break him? She asked quietly. Hansol's black eyes narrowed. Everything breaks, Suji. We just haven't found his point yet. Physical tests show limited results, Hansol told Taiwan as they walked down a long corridor. The human body is fragile, but has surprising endurance. Taiwan's face remained cold. Then we must attack the mind. All species have psychological weaknesses. They entered a new room where Jay sat in a chair. Metal bands held his arms and legs. A strange helmet covered the top half of his face. This device connects to the brain, Hansol explained to Ja. It creates perfect illusions that feel completely real. Jay's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. Sujai stood by the controls, looking uncomfortable. Jin checked Jay's vital signs on a screen. Begin with his greatest loss, Hansol ordered. Suji hesitated, then pressed a button. Inside the helmet, Jay's world changed. He was no longer in the Kirill research station. He stood on a dusty street on Proxima Colony. Buildings burned around him. People ran screaming. And there was Yuna, his sister, trapped under fallen metal beams. Ja, help me, she cried, reaching out her hand. Jay ran toward her, knowing what would happen next. He had lived this moment in his nightmares for years. As he reached for Yuna's hand, the building collapsed completely. No, Jay screamed. In the lab, his body jerked against the restraints. His heart rate spiked dangerously high. His stress levels are extreme, Jin reported. Brain activity suggests severe emotional distress. Hansol nodded. Good. Reset and repeat the simulation. Sujai looked shocked. Repeat it. But. Do it, Taiwan commanded. Again and again, Jay watched his sister die. Sometimes he got closer to saving her. Sometimes he was farther away. But the result was always the same. Yuna always died, and he could never save her. After the 5th time, Jin noticed something odd. His vital signs are stabilizing, he said with surprise. Stress hormones are decreasing. Inside the simulation, Jay knelt beside his sister's body. But this time, instead of screaming, he gently touched her face. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, he whispered. But I carry you with me, always. He stood up and faced the burning sky. His eyes were sad but clear. In the lab, Hansol frowned. Increase the emotional intensity. Add more personal failures. The simulation changed. Now Jay saw his first ship, the Horizon *, under attack. He watched his young crew die because of an order he gave. Then he saw his failed marriage, his ex-wife walking away. He saw every mistake, every failure, every loss. Yet with each new horror, his vital signs became more stable, not less. I don't understand, Jin said. It's like he's adapting to the pain. Impossible, Hansol snapped. No one adapts to this level of psychological torture. After hours of simulations, they removed the helmet. Jay's face was wet with tears, but his eyes were clear and focused. He looked directly at Hansol. My sister died 6 years ago, he said quietly. I've relived that day 1,000 times in my own mind. You showed me nothing new. Hansol stepped back, unsettled by Jay's calm. You think seeing my worst moments will break me, Jay continued. But humans don't break from remembering pain. We learn from it. Each time you show me these things, I get stronger, not weaker. Taiwan's eyes narrowed. An interesting claim. We shall see if it holds true when we dig deeper. He turned to Hansol. Prepare the neural probe. Later, in her private quarters, Sujai reviewed the day's data. She watched recordings of Jay's vital signs during the simulations. At first, they spiked with stress and pain. But then, remarkably, they would stabilize. With each new simulation, the stabilization happened faster. She had never seen anything like it. The human wasn't just enduring. He was adapting to the pain, using it somehow. Suji began a private research file, one not connected to the main system. She titled it, Human Resilience, the Adaptation Factor. She didn't know why she was doing this. She only knew that what they were seeing in this human was something special, something that deserved to be understood, not destroyed. The neural probe room was dimly lit with a soft purple glow. In the center stood a chair that looked more like a spider's web made of metal. Jay sat in it, his head held in place by a thin silver band. Hansol adjusted controls on a floating panel. This device is far more advanced than the simulation helmet. It will not create false scenarios. Instead, it will access your actual memories. You're going to read my mind, Jay said. More than that, we will experience your memories as if they were our own. Hansol looked at Suji and Jin. We will all connect to see different aspects of the human mind. Sujai stepped forward. Is this safe? For him, I mean. It is not designed to be safe, Taiwan said from the doorway. It is designed to be effective. Hansol activated the device. The silver band around Jay's head glowed blue. Joe gasped as it connected to his neural pathways. The Chiral scientists put on smaller versions of the same band. Immediately, their minds linked with Jay's. His memories became visible to them like a storm of images and feelings. Hansol focused the probe on Jay's most painful memories, starting again with Yuna's death on Proxima Colony. But this time, they didn't just see it, they felt it. They felt Jay's crushing grief as he held his sister's body, the emptiness that followed him for months, the nights he couldn't sleep, the days he couldn't eat. But then, something unexpected happened. The memory shifted to show what came after. They saw Jay standing at a memorial service, planting a tree in Yuna's honor. They felt his pain, yes, but also something else. A strange sense of growth, like a plant pushing through concrete. What is this feeling? Jin asked, his voice distant in the shared mental space. He calls it post-traumatic growth, Suji said, reading the emotional data. The human mind can sometimes transform trauma into strength. Hansol pushed deeper, searching for more breaking points. They saw Earth's history through Jay's memories and education, wars, plagues, natural disasters. They saw humans facing terrible suffering throughout their history. But with each disaster, they also saw rebuilding. After wars came peace efforts. After plagues came medical advances. After earthquakes and floods came stronger buildings and better warning systems. Fascinating, Jin whispered. They used their suffering to improve. Hansol wasn't satisfied. There must be a limit, something that breaks them completely. The probe dug deeper into memories Jay had never fully faced. The guilt he carried for crew members lost under his command. The failure of his marriage. The death of his parents when he was young. Suddenly, the neural link showed a memory of Jay sitting alone in his quarters after Yuna's death. He had a gun in his hand. He was considering ending his life. Here, Hansol said, this is his breaking point. But then they watched as Jai put the gun down. He picked up a picture of Yuna and looked at it for a long time. Then he stood up, put the picture in his pocket, and walked out the door. The next memory showed him volunteering to help rebuild the colony where Yuna died. I don't understand, Hansol said, frustration clear in his voice. What stopped him? Jay's voice echoed through the neural link. Hope. Even in our darkest moments, humans can find hope. Taiwan, watching from his separate console, frowned deeply. This is concerning. Their ability to endure and adapt makes them more dangerous than we thought. As the memory probe continued, something unexpected happened. The machine created a two-way connection. While the Chiral examined Jay's memories, he caught glimpses of theirs. He saw the Chiral homeworld, a beautiful planet with crystal cities. He saw their history of perfect order, with no wars or major disasters for thousands of years. He saw their fear of chaos and unpredictability, their fear of species like humans. When the neural probe finally powered down, everyone was silent. The connection had shown them more than they expected. Han Sol looked at Ja with new eyes. Your species has known more suffering than ours has in our entire history. Yet you persist. You rebuild. You hope. Why? Jay smiled tiredly. Because that's what humans do. We break, but we never stay broken. Taiwan turned away, his face troubled. Increased security on the human. I need to consult with the High Council. As the others left, Suji stayed behind, looking at the data from the memory dive. What she saw both fascinated and disturbed her. The human capacity for endurance wasn't just physical or mental. It was something much deeper, something that Kirill had never encountered before. Ja lay on his bed in the small cell, eyes closed but mind racing. During the memory dive, when the neural connection had briefly gone both ways, he had seen more than just glimpses of the Kirill homeworld. He had seen the layout of this research station. He had seen how their security systems worked. And he had seen something even more important, the location of their communication array. The door slid open. Jin entered with a tray of food. Your evening meal, Jin said, placing the tray on a small table. Jay sat up slowly, as if very tired. Thank you, Jin. Jin looked at him with curious eyes. You are recovering well from the neural probe. Most test subjects need days to regain full consciousness. Jay smiled weakly. Humans are good at recovering. He picked at the food, which looked like blue cubes. May I ask you something? Jin hesitated, then nodded. Why do you help Han Sol with these tests? You seem different from the others. Jin's eyes darted to the door. I believe in learning, in understanding other species. But, he paused. The methods are sometimes troubling. Jay nodded sympathetically. Hard to learn about something by breaking it. Jin looked surprised at Jay's insight. I should go. Rest well. After Jin left, Jay waited exactly 17 minutes, the gap in the security sweep that he had seen in the neural link. Then he moved to the wall panel near his bed. Thanks to the two-way connection of the neural probe, Jay now understood basic Kirill technology. He pressed his palm against the panel in a specific pattern. It slid open, revealing wires and circuits. Carefully, he rearranged several connections. The door to his cell clicked and slid open. Jay stepped into the empty hallway. He moved quickly but quietly, following the mental map he had absorbed during the probe connection. He avoided the main corridors, using maintenance passages instead. Twice he had to hide from Kirill guards. Once he nearly ran into Suji, but ducked into a storage room just in time. Finally, he reached the communication center. It was late in the station's cycle, and only one Kirill technician was on duty. Judd waited until the technician stepped away, then slipped inside. The communication array was complex, but again, his knowledge from the neural link helped him. He quickly began typing on the Kirill interface, sending out a specific pattern of signals, a distress call that Earth ships would recognize. He had just finished the basic message when an alarm blared. He had been discovered. Jay worked faster, adding coordinates and a brief warning about the Kirill. He was almost done when the door slid open. Han Sol stood there with 4 guards. Step away from the console, Han Sol ordered. Jay hit one last sequence of buttons before raising his hands. It's done. The guards rushed forward, grabbing him roughly. Han Sol checked the console. You sent a message, Han Sol said, eyes narrowing. Who did you contact? Earth Defense Fleet, Jay said calmly. They'll be here soon. Han Sol studied Jay's face. You accessed our systems during the neural probe. It wasn't a question. The connection went both ways, Jay confirmed. You saw my memories. I saw your station layout. Taiwan stormed into the room, face dark with anger. What happened? The human escaped and sent a message to Earth, Han Sol explained. Taiwan glared at Ja. Your escape attempt has failed. We blocked most of your transmission. Most, but not all, Jay said. His face showed no disappointment or fear, just calm acceptance. This puzzled Hansol. You don't seem concerned about being recaptured. Jay smiled slightly. The escape wasn't the main goal. Suji, who had just entered the room, looked at Ja with sudden understanding. He never expected to fully escape. He just needed to send the message. Take him to the high-security lab, Ta-1 ordered. No more tests. It's time for more direct methods. As the guards dragged Jai away, Hansol felt a strange sense of unease. The human had used their own technology against them. He had adapted to his captivity, found an opportunity, and taken it. Most troubling of all was his calm acceptance of recapture. It was as if sending that partial message was all he needed to do. Suji, Hansol said quietly, analyze that transmission. Find out exactly what information got through before we blocked it. Suji nodded, but as she turned to the console, she couldn't help feeling a grudging admiration for the human's resourcefulness, and a growing concern about what Ta-1 meant by more direct methods. The high-security lab was cold and sterile. Metal tables lined the walls, covered with tools that glinted under harsh white lights. Jay was strapped to a chair in the center of the room, his wrists and ankles bound with metal cuffs. Ta-1 stood before him, tall and imposing. The time for scientific observation is over. Now we need answers. What answers? Jay asked calmly. Human military capabilities, Earth Defense Fleet protocols, the location of your colonies. Ta-1's voice was hard. You will tell us everything. Ja looked Ta-1 in the eyes. No, I won't. The Supreme Commander's face showed no emotion. We have ways to make you talk. Sujai entered the room, carrying a datapad. She stopped when she saw the scene before her. Supreme Commander, I completed my analysis of the transmission, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Most of it was blocked, but a partial distress signal got through, along with some coordinates. So they know he's alive and where to look, Ta-1 said. How long before they could reach us? Based on known human ship capabilities, no less than 2 weeks, Suji replied. Ta-1 nodded. Then we have time. He turned to a Kyril guard. Begin the procedure. The guard picked up a thin metal rod with a glowing blue tip. Suji's eyes widened. Supreme Commander, that device is for criminal interrogation, she protested. It causes extreme pain. The human is a research subject, not a criminal. He is an enemy combatant who contacted his military, Ta-1 replied coldly. This is now a security matter, not a scientific one. The guard approached Ja with the pain rod. Jay's muscles tensed, but his eyes remained steady. Wait, Suji said quickly. If you damage him too severely, we lose valuable research data. At least let me monitor his condition. Ta-1 considered, then nodded. Very well. For the next several hours, they questioned Ja. Each time he refused to answer, they used the pain rod. Suji monitored his vital signs, occasionally calling for breaks when his readings became dangerous. Through it all, Jay remained silent about Earth's defenses, but strangely, he talked freely about other things. During one break, as Suji checked his pulse, Jay asked her about Kyril music. Music? She repeated, surprised by the question. Yes, in human culture, music is important. It helps us express feelings, share stories. What kind of music do the Kyril have? Suji hesitated, then described the crystal harmonies of her world. Later, when Jin came to replace Suji, Jay engaged him in conversation about Kyril families. Do you have children, Jin? Jai asked, his voice hoarse from screaming. Jin seemed taken aback. No, I am too young in our life cycle. I hope you do someday, Jay said. Children teach us much about what truly matters. Hansol watched these interactions with growing confusion. I don't understand, he said to Sujai in the observation room. Why does he engage in friendly conversation with the people causing him pain? Sujai had been wondering the same thing. I've been studying human psychological patterns. They have a concept called maintaining humanity in captivity. By forcing normal social interaction, he refuses to let the situation dehumanize him, or us. In the main lab, Taiwan grew increasingly frustrated. You've endured much pain for information that doesn't matter. Why protect Earth's secrets at such cost? Jai, his face pale and drawn from hours of torture, looked up. Because that's my duty. But there's something else you should know. What? Taiwan leaned closer. The message I sent wasn't just a distress call, Jay said quietly. It was also a warning about your species, your technology, your weaknesses. I learned a lot during that neural link. Taiwan stepped back, his face showing the first real emotion Jay had seen. Fear. Later that night, as Jay lay in his cell, barely able to move from pain, the door slid open. Jin entered quietly, carrying a small container. Extra rations, Jin whispered, and medicine for the pain. Thank you, Jay said. But why help me? Jin looked around nervously. What you said about hope, about finding meaning in suffering, we don't have these concepts. But they make me curious. After Jin left, Jay smiled despite his pain. He had sent his message. Help was coming. And now, he had even planted seeds of doubt among his captors. Somewhere out in space, Commander Dugyun of the Earth Defense Fleet received the partial distress signal. He immediately ordered his ships to change course. Hold on, Jay, he said to the starry void. We're coming. 7 days had passed since Jay sent his message. The torture sessions continued, but they yielded no useful information. Taiwan was growing impatient. We need to try the neural probe again, he told Hansol. But this time, set it to maximum intensity. Hansol looked concerned. At maximum intensity, it could cause permanent brain damage. That is no longer relevant, Taiwan said coldly. We need information about Earth's military capabilities before their ships arrive. In the lab, Jay was once again strapped into the neural probe chair. His body showed signs of the torture he had endured. Bruises covered his arms and face, and he had lost weight. But his eyes remained clear and focused. Hansol activated the neural probe. The silver band around Jay's head glowed bright blue, almost white. Jay's body stiffened as the machine connected to his brain. Focus on his military training, Taiwan ordered. Find the information about Earth's defenses. Hansol, Suji, and Jin put on their connecting bands. The neural link formed, pulling them into Jay's mind. They pushed past his surface thoughts, diving deeper into his memories. But something strange happened. As they increased the power, the connection became stronger than before. Too strong. Instead of just seeing Jay's memories, they began to feel his emotions with overwhelming intensity. Suddenly, Hansol gasped. Through the link, he felt a wave of pain. Jay's pain from the torture sessions. It was like fire running through his veins. But alongside the pain was something else. A deep well of compassion and hope that seemed impossible given the circumstances. What is happening? Taiwan demanded, watching the scientists' faces contort. The link. It's too strong, Suji managed to say. We're experiencing his emotions directly. In the shared mental space, Hansol tried to break free, but the connection held firm. He felt everything Jay had endured, not just the physical pain, but the loneliness, the fear, the determination to protect his people. And then something even more unexpected happened. Jay's mind reached back through the connection. Instead of fighting, he opened himself completely. He showed them not just his suffering, but his understanding of it. How humans used pain as a teacher, how they found meaning in struggle. This is what you wanted to know, Jay's voice echoed in their minds. This is why humans don't break. Images flowed through the connection. Humans throughout history facing terrible hardships, wars, disasters, plagues. But after each catastrophe, the same pattern emerged. People helping each other, rebuilding, finding joy again. Hansol felt tears on his face. The neural link had shown him something his species had never understood. That strength came not from avoiding pain, but from facing it together. Suddenly, the connection broke. The neural probe had overloaded. Hansol, Suji, and Jin removed their bands, their hands shaking. "What did you see?" Tadwan demanded. Hansol looked at Ja with new eyes. "Everything," he whispered. "I felt everything." Later, in Hansol's private lab, the three scientists gathered to discuss what had happened. "The neural feedback was unlike anything in our records," Jin said, reviewing the data. "It wasn't just feedback," Suji said quietly. "It was communication. He showed us what we needed to see." Hansol had been silent, lost in thought. "Our entire approach was wrong," he finally said. "We tried to break him by causing pain. But pain is not new to humans. It's a part of them." Suji nodded. "Their strength comes from how they respond to suffering, not from avoiding it." "We need to stop these experiments," Hansol said firmly. "This is no longer about scientific discovery. It's about basic morality." As they spoke, Suji's private data pad beeped. She looked at it, and her face paled. "What is it?" Jin asked. "I've been monitoring internal communications," she said. "Taiwan has just received orders from the High Council. They consider the human too dangerous now that he's contacted his fleet." She took a deep breath. "They've ordered the station to be destroyed when the Earth ships get close. They plan to kill everyone, including us." Hansol's eyes widened. "When?" "The self-destruct sequence is set to begin in 48 hours, Suji whispered. Hansol stood up. "Then we have no choice. We must free the human." "That's treason," Jin said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," Hansol agreed. "But it's also right." The lights in the high-security lab were dimmed for the night cycle. Two guards stood outside Jay's cell, their posture stiff and alert. Inside, Jay lay on his narrow bed, eyes closed but mind active. His body ached from weeks of tests and torture, but his resolve remained unbroken. A soft hiss made him open his eyes. The door was sliding open. Hansol stood there with Sujai and Jin behind him. "We don't have much time," Hansol whispered. "The guards will wake up soon." Jay noticed the two guards slumped on the floor. What happened to them? "Sleep gas," Jin explained. "Harmless but effective." Jay sat up slowly. "Why are you helping me?" "The station is set to self-destruct in 47 hours, Suji said. "Taiwan plans to destroy everyone here, including us. We need to stop it and warn your approaching fleet." Jay studied their faces. The neural connection had changed things between them. He had felt their emotions just as they had felt his. He knew they were telling the truth. "I'll need clothes," he said. "And a weapon if possible." Minutes later, Jay was dressed in a simple Kirill uniform. It didn't fit perfectly, but it was better than the prisoner jumpsuit. Jin handed him a small silver device. "It's a shock tool, not very powerful, but better than nothing," Jin said. They moved through the darkened corridors, avoiding the main paths. Sujai led the way, using her access codes to bypass security. They needed to reach the central control room to disable the self-destruct system. "Why would Taiwan destroy the station?" Jay asked as they hurried along. "Why kill his own people?" "The High Council fears what Earth might learn from capturing this facility," Hansol explained. "And what you already learned during the neural connection." "They're afraid," Jay realized. "Afraid of humans." "Yes," Suji said. "Your species adapts to challenges in ways we don't understand. It frightens them." As they turned a corner, they came face to face with two Kirill guards. Before anyone could react, Jay stepped forward. "Official transfer," he said calmly, as if he belonged there. "The prisoner is being moved on Taiwan's orders." The guards hesitated, confused by his confidence. That moment was enough for Jin to release another burst of sleep gas. The guards crumpled to the floor. "Quick thinking," Hansol said with surprise. Jay smiled grimly. Humans are good at improvising. They continued through the station. At one point, they had to hide in a storage room while a patrol passed. Squeezed together in the dark space, Suji asked a question that had been bothering her. "After what we did to you, why don't you hate us?" Jay was quiet for a moment. Hate is easy, but it solves nothing. Throughout human history, our greatest achievements came when we chose understanding over hatred, cooperation over revenge. Even after torture, Jin asked softly. "The neural link showed you my pain," Jay replied. "But it also showed you that pain doesn't define us. What matters is what we do next." Hansol shook his head in wonder. This is why your species survives. This ability to forgive, to find common ground even with enemies. They reached the central control room. It was empty except for one technician who Suji quickly convinced to take a break. Hansol went to work on the main console. "The self-destruct sequence is locked," he said after several minutes. "We need Taiwan's authorization code to cancel it." "Then we need to warn my people," Jay said. "How long until the Earth fleet arrives?" "Approximately 30 hours, Sujai calculated. Not enough time to evacuate everyone." Jay thought for a moment. "We need to send a message to both the Earth fleet and your High Council. Show them there's another way besides destruction." As Hansol prepared the communication system, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. A voice came over the speakers, Taiwan's voice. "Attention all personnel. The prisoner has escaped with the help of traitors. Security teams to all levels. They must not reach the communication array." Jin looked at the others, his face pale. "He knows. We need to hurry," Jay said. "And we need to be ready for a fight." Hansol turned to him with a grim expression. "You're still weak from the torture. You should hide while we—" Jay cut him off. "On Earth, we have a saying. We rise by lifting others. I won't abandon you now." The console beeped, showing security teams converging on their location. "They'll be here in minutes," Suji warned. Jai picked up his shock tool. "Then let's give them something they don't expect. A human and 3 Kirill working together." Security forces surrounded the control room. Jai and his 3 Kirill allies had barricaded the doors, but it wouldn't hold for long. "The Earth fleet will be here in 28 hours, Suji said, checking the scanner. "The self-destruct is set for 27 hours and 15 minutes. "Cutting it close," Jay muttered. He was working with Jin to bypass the communication lockdown. His fingers moved quickly over the alien controls, applying what he had learned from the neural link. Hansol watched in amazement. "You adapted to our technology so quickly." "Humans are good at that," Jay said with a small smile. "We see patterns, make connections. It's how we survive." A loud bang shook the barricaded door. Taiwan's voice came through a speaker. "This is futile. Surrender now, and perhaps the High Council will show mercy to our own kind." Hansol pressed the response button. "And the human? What about him?" "The human will be executed, of course," Taiwan replied coldly. "He is too dangerous to live." Jay continued working as they talked. "Almost there," he whispered to Jin. Suddenly, the console lit up. "We're in," Jin exclaimed. "We can send a message to both the Earth fleet and the High Council." "What should we say?" Suji asked, looking at Jai. Jay thought for a moment. "We tell the truth. About what happened here. About what you learned about humans. And about what I learned about the Kirill." As Jay began recording the message, another bang hit the door. Metal groaned as it began to bend. "They're breaking through," Hansol warned. Jay spoke clearly into the recorder. "This is Captain Jeb Park of Earth. I am sending this message to both Earth Command and the Kirill High Council. What began as capture and torture has become something else entirely, an understanding between our species." He described the experiments, the torture, and the neural connection that had changed everything. He explained how the Kirill scientists had seen inside his mind and learned about human resilience. We don't break because we know that being broken and reformed is part of life, Jay said. Pain teaches us. Loss strengthens us. Failure guides us to new paths. As he spoke, the door began to give way. Suji and Jin took positions with their weapons. The Kiral fear us because they don't understand us, Jay continued. But understanding has begun here, with these 3 brave scientists who chose compassion over fear. There is another way forward, one without destruction. The door burst open. Security forces poured in, led by Taiwan. Hansol stepped in front of Jay protectively. Stop the message, Taiwan ordered. It's too late, Jin said. It's already transmitting. Taiwan raised his weapon, aiming at Ja. Then I will end this myself. Before he could fire, the station shook violently. Warning lights flashed. What's happening? Taiwan demanded. Sujud checked the scanner, her eyes wide. The Earth fleet. They're here early. On the main screen, a fleet of Earth ships appeared. They had arrived 24 hours ahead of schedule. A voice came through the communication system. This is Commander Du Hyun of the Earth Defense Fleet. We demand the immediate release of Captain Ja Park and all research data. Taiwan's face showed shock. Impossible. They couldn't have traveled so quickly. Jay smiled. Another human trait. When someone we care about is in danger, we find ways to do the impossible. The next hours were a blur of negotiations. With weapons aimed at each other, neither side could win without heavy losses. Jay, despite his weakened state, took the lead in talks. We don't want war, he told both Taiwan and Du Hyun. We want understanding. 3 months later, on Earth, Jay stood in a small garden. He carefully placed a young tree in a hole he had dug. As he packed soil around its roots, Suji and Jin watched. They wore simple Earth clothes now, looking almost human except for their blue skin. On Earth, we plant trees to remember those we've lost, Jay explained, thinking of his sister Yuna, but also to show hope for the future. Your people accepted us so easily, Jin said with wonder, even after what our kind did to you. Suji touched a leaf on the young tree. Hansol would have liked to see this. His research paper is changing how our people view humans. Hansol had stayed behind, facing the High Council to defend his actions. His report, The Unbreakable Human Spirit, How Adversity Creates Strength, had caused a revolution in Kiral thinking. What do you think will happen next? Jin asked. Between our species. Ja looked at the sky, knowing that somewhere up there, cautious diplomatic meetings were beginning. I don't know, he admitted, but whatever challenges come, we'll face them. That's what humans do. We bend, we crack, we sometimes feel broken, but we never truly break, because being reshaped by hardship is simply part of what makes us human.